Welcome to the all-new Tradecast, the podcast that digs deep into the heart of UK construction industry. I'm your host, Colin, and whether you're laying bricks, pouring concrete, or designing the next architectural masterpiece, this is a show where all sectors of the UK construction world are heard. Right, so Rob, thank you very much for coming on, buddy. As I say, we try and start this off with going as far back as you're willing to go, so let the listeners know who you are and where you started.
So, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Rob Muldoon. I have been a bricklayer for the past 24 years. Started in the construction industry back in the year 2000 when the summers were always nicer and warmer and life was a lot easier. And I worked for a big brickwork contractor down in Manchester, working on all the big high-rise stuff that you see in all the city centres and stuff like that. And forged a career all around the northwest and I actually worked on some really good projects. I worked on things like Man City's training ground, Coronation Street, loads of multi-storey stuff. I did loads of MOD work, prisons, hospitals, all that sort of stuff. It was all sort of big commercial stuff that I worked on. And various roles along the way, and managed to work my way up to be a project manager for that company. And in between working there, like when times got a little bit slack on there and I had to fill my own work, I was doing bits on the side, and I went through a crazy period of just like banging ridiculous amounts of work in. I'd be working on the big sites and then going building stuff on a weekend and doing extensions for people. And I did that for a good few years, so from sort of 2005 up to 2012-ish, balancing my time between the two companies. And then I actually went bankrupt in 2012. So the recession came, people were not paying and trying to deal with all that side of things. And I can keep going, I'll put a little bit more money into it and I'll try and balance it out and keep it going, and just being crazy. And it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I built, it was like 2 hours. I built them in Mosley, which is like a quality area in Manchester. And the guy just wasn't paying. He was playing all the tricks under the sun. Yep. Oh, that's not good enough, and snagging list as long as my arms and saying how am I meant to fit my windows to the internal block work. I'm like, you don't fit windows to internal. Just coming up with tons and stuff.
Trying every excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I was young at the time. I was young, naive, and he tried to take the mick out of me basically, and I should have been a lot stronger and push back a lot more, but I didn't have the experience and I didn't have the know-how, and it got too much. And then because that put me on the back foot. Yep. Then for the next couple of years, I was constantly trying to catch up from that job, and the jobs were getting sort of harder and harder, and I was probably snatching work that I shouldn't have really been doing. Now I wouldn't even look at a lot of them jobs. But I guess I had to go through that journey to learn that, and now I came out the other side of it, and it got to 2012, and I couldn't keep my head above water anymore, and it got too much. And actually, Travis Perkins wound me up, and I lost everything, and I started again and rebuilt myself back up from that. Yeah. But I just concentrated on the site work for a long time after that, and that's. Because I'd done all that work for myself, I ended up getting the qualifications to do site management and things like that, and that allowed me to progress my career on the other side. Yeah.
So obviously, if you've spent that length of time in the industry, was it something that you wanted? When you started off, did you want to be a bricklayer, or did you fall into it? Or
I sort of fell into it. I was a classic example of somebody who works within the construction industry, leaving school with no qualifications, very poor school life. School wasn't for me. Yeah. Education system wasn't for me. It didn't click with me. Like I have dyslexia and things like that, so I struggled academically. Yep. And I used to get called thick, stupid, like his attention span is not good enough, or Rob's got potential but he's just not living up to it. All the usual stuff. And I got a job with a small local builder when I left school. And we started doing bricklaying. I was like, you know what, this clicks. I get it. I can look it. I can see it. I can take it apart. I can understand it. Yeah. And I sort of grew it from there. And then a couple of months after that, when I was about 17 years old, I got in with the big brickwork contractor that I worked for all them years. Yeah.
So in terms of, obviously you've worked for yourself, you've also worked in the commercial side and obviously bigger building sites. What would you say, if you were to pick one, what would you say was your favourite? Working for yourself or working for the other man?
There's there's loads of pros and cons for both sides of it. Like the commercial stuff, I loved it. And I think if I had a choice of going back now, I'd probably go back to commercial life. And we'll talk about like how that affected me later on. But I think with that, you can go all over the world and do it. Yeah. You can work on some brilliant projects. I mean, we're obviously here in Glasgow, and you've only got to look around all the amazing projects that have been built around there. And it allowed me to live comfortably. It was a good career. It allowed me to grow a family and buy a house and all that sort of stuff. It was steady and it was good. Whereas working for yourself, as you know, it's like, am I going to get paid? Yep. Is this going to be enough? Have I priced this right? All the stresses and strains of making sure that you're not going to come to a hard stop, and you don't know what to do and things like that. I tended to enjoy the commercial stuff more than I did the private stuff. Yeah.
Again, you said there's pros and cons. So working for yourself, you've got paperwork, customers, chasing the work, pricing, everything. And then obviously when you're going to commercial, you've kind of got a list and you've got to work through the list. Obviously, you're going to touch on it later, but the higher you go in your role in the commercial, the bigger your list gets, I guess. So there's pros and cons on both sides.
This is it. I could turn up to work on a Monday and doing the commercial stuff, and I knew that, right, this is what I've got to do, and everything was set there. Exactly like I say, I hadn't gone out and priced it. I didn't have to worry about all that side of it. I didn't have to chase the work. I didn't have to worry that have I got enough work in front of me for however months. But then on the flip side of it, on the domestic stuff, there wasn't as many rules, regulations. There's a bit more freedom. There was more connection with the client and all that sort of stuff. And it was good, but I think I definitely preferred the commercial stuff.
So in terms of, obviously, bricklaying's a trade and it's a very good trade for certain people. Would you encourage youngsters to keep going down the route of bricklaying, and is there anything?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, there's no doubt about it. It's a hard, heavy trade. Yeah. And you're up early, out the door early, and as soon as you get out of that van, it can be pretty full on. Yeah. And you're working with characters that'll let you know when you're not doing the best at your potential.
Funnily enough, I done a bit of labouring when I was younger for an Irish bricklaying squad, and fuck me, that was hard. They were shouting at me left, right and centre. They were building a scaling denny, and it was all block work. So breeze block after breeze block, bucket after mortar, bucket of mortar, bucket of mortar. It was just constant loading out. So I kind of grasped a certain aspect of how hard it was. So it's a hard graft.
This is it. When I was an apprentice, I worked with a lot of people that were like that, and I used to go home from work absolutely done. Yeah. But I used to sit at home and I'd be eating my dinner, I've had a shower or whatever, I'd be sat either in my room or downstairs, wherever, and I'd be like, you know what, I actually really enjoyed that. Yeah. I feel I had a huge sense of achievement that I'd come in, there was a big, say, loading out a massive pile of block or brick, whatever it was. I loaded them out, it's all clear, them lads are all now laying them and they're building these walls, and it's giving me that sense of achievement and making me feel like I'm worth something, and I'm progressing instead of being told, oh, you're no good and this is no good. And because I could get it and I could understand and I could look and see how they do it, I used to do the lads' head in, asking questions all the time, and they'd be like, I speak to you more than I speak to my wife. Why do you? And then they'd be like you fin the mortar, and I used to say to them, why'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't know, he's doing it. And it's just all the stupid little things.
Asking hundreds of questions.
Yeah, hundreds of questions and learning, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on it earlier when we were chatting of bricklaying is one of those jobs where you can get an instant satisfaction because you go out, you put a shift in, and you can instantly see what you've achieved. Is that something that you think is a great thing that you can take away for every shift?
Yeah, definitely. You can look back and see what you've done.
There's a lot of trades where you can go out and do a full shift and you won't see the instant difference, whereas bricklaying is one of the jobs that they can fire houses up like it's going out of fashion.
This is it. And you can fire the houses up or build the walls or build whatever it is you're doing, and that'll be there forever and a day. Yeah. And you can drive around and do everybody's head in when they're in the car and saying, look, I built that wall or whatever, and things like that. And you can be immensely proud of what you do because you can physically see it. Yeah. And that used to help me out a lot when I was younger, and that helped me progress and kept me motivated to keep going, because I could look at it and see my improvement all the way through, even just in like sections of walls that I was building. Yeah. and that really helped me develop my skills and my love for the industry.
Yeah. Again, there's quite a lot of interesting materials that you can get to work with. It's not just house bricks, just basic bricks. Like, you must have worked with some nice materials through your time.
Yeah, we did like some big. It was a big B&Q actually. We did, and it was all split face stone and stuff like that.
I actually like that stone as well.
Yeah, it's all sort
good in gardens.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was all done, and so it all came cut, and all sides, bottom were all cut, but the face was all split and
nice.
It looked really good, and learning how to do that, and then like where I live now I live in the Peak District, and that's all stonework around there. So learning and transferring those skills over for that, and it's hard because like on that commercial side of things as well, because it is all price orientated. You go all the time. Yeah. You got to lay as many bricks as you can to get your money in to earn it. Like I used to give myself a treat. I'd be busting for a P, but I'd be like, no, I'll get another 10 courses in, I'll get this in, and then I can go for a P.
There's plenty of TikToks jumping about now where bricklayers are getting 20 quid a brick.
Yeah,
any clearance on that? No.
It's a lot of crap. They just do that to get the attention, but you can earn decent money. There was lads that I worked with. We had a gang come over from Ireland that used to come and do work with us, and they were like 130 grand a year they were earning. Really? The money's there to be earned.
That is quite a lucrative business then if you're good at it.
Yeah, that's it. If you're good, you're quick, you're neat, tidy.
And let's be honest, with Instagram out there now, and obviously the social scene, you can see there's a lot of very good bricklayers out there. Yeah,
there is. There's guys making it, and the once you get a reputation for being that, you're sought after. Yeah. And there's a huge void in the trade because nobody wants to come in and do it. Nobody wants to do the hard graft and put the hours in and put the shift in.
Again, the generations are changing, and it is like we even find it hard bringing labourers out to learn. Landscaping's a hard game as well. It's probably not as hard as humping bricks about every day, but when it comes to the winter, they don't want to do it. Yeah. So I can only imagine what that kind of bricklaying scene is. We try to get decent bodies in through obviously the youth that don't want to work.
Yeah, well, this is it. And I think, I mean, for me, I love being outside. Yeah, I absolutely love it. It doesn't matter how cold it is. Obviously, you can't lay in certain temperatures, and you can't lay when it's peeing it down. But there's always something to do.
There's always something. You can be loading out or something.
You can be prepping for days and days and days. So you might do 4 or 5 days in the winter of prep, and you've not earned a decent wage. But then the coming few weeks after that, if you get a break in the weather, you can smash it.
Bombing it.
And there is a lot of famine and feast within the industry. I've seen recessions and down periods and where prices have dropped. I mean, I remember working for like £220 a thousand, whereas now you're roughly around about the £650, £700 a thousand. Yeah. So there's famine and feast in it, and even through from like 2008 up to 2013, really 14, before it started picking up again. I never had a Monday where I couldn't go to work. Yeah. But that Monday I might have earned 60 quid rather than 200 quid. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
So in a good shift, what's your kind of average numbers for a bricklayer?
For a bricklayer, you probably get a good 600 brick, 200, 250 block in, something like that, depending on what they're doing. I mean, there's lads that I work with that'll do 1,200 brick a day every single day, if they've got the runs for it.
If it's all made and set and ready to just go. Somebody else running behind them, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, we had a gang. I worked with a gang from Redcar up in the northeast, and they were a big beast of a gang to feed. They'd lay 1,000 block a day between the pair of them. Jesus. And they were earning sort of 3-4 grand a week each and paying the labourer 1,500 quid. And they were extra, like when you're building schools and you've got corridors that are 300 metres long and all that sort of stuff, and walls coming off it everywhere. Mm-hmm. If you get organised and get yourself ready and get a good team working together, you can hit it and earn real good money.
Streamline and just go. Then you're earning money.
There's guys that I used to work with, a couple of the older boys, you used to look at them, they were never sweating, they were never flustered, they were never like screaming and shouting. They were just 1, 2, 3 all the time, and they just perfected the art of organisation and getting themselves prepped and then laying the bricks. Yeah. And they'd smash it in and run rings around the young kids.
Fair enough. So let's kind of touch on to your commercial work now and how you came to the position you're in now. Obviously, you've said that you're in the industry for 24 years, and I know your travels pretty much hung up and done. So let's go into your commercial side. Let us know a wee bit about that.
So, like I said, when I when I did go bankrupt and I just folded that business and I solely concentrated on working on the sites, I'd already picked up the qualifications for doing site management stuff, and I sort of fell into it.
Yeah.
The company I worked for said, "Oh, that guy's going on holiday cover. You've got the ticket for that. Go on then." And I've sort of thrown in.
Flung it at the deep end.
Yeah, literally. And then I was getting shouted at, "Why aren't you doing this?" I'm like, I didn't know I had to do that. And I was a massive overthinker, because when I got flung into that job, I was like, oh God, why am I in charge of all this? I shouldn't be doing this. And that caused me to overthink situations, because I didn't want to let them down. Yeah. And I didn't want to be seen to be not to know how to do my job. Mm-hmm. So I used to just massively overthink situations. And I used to, in one way it was great, because everybody had everything. I was never running out of stuff, because I was so scared that I'd make a mistake. Yeah. I was overanalyzing everything. But then on the other side of it, it started to take over my life. Yeah. And it was a bit too much. And nothing to do with the company that I worked for. They were great. Yeah. They looked after me and supported me. But it was me putting ridiculous pressure on myself, because I used to sit in rooms and meetings and all that sort of stuff, and all these people might be Colin and the site manager, and then he'd have all letters after his name because they'd been to university and all that, and it was massive imposter syndrome. And I used to sit there and I'm like, well, I'm just Rob the bricklayer, and I'm looking after this massive project, and what am I meant to be doing? I shouldn't be here doing that. And it started to totally and utterly take over my life, or it was taking over my life and I was ignoring it. Yeah. I wasn't paying attention to it, because it was great for a while, and I love the fact that people used to rely on me quite heavily. Oh, Rob will sort that out. But if I was sorting all that out, I wasn't concentrating on what I was doing. Yeah. And then I'd be like, oh God, I've got to go and sort this out, and I've said I promised I'll do this. And
so basically just stretched too thin.
Yeah, I was stretching myself too thin and not being efficient with my time, and not knowing. And it did get too much for me after a while, but it was brilliant and I loved it. I really, really did love it. And like I said, I got to work on some great projects, and I can go all around the northwest and a lot of the northeast of England and all the way down to Birmingham and all that sort of stuff. There's big projects that I've worked on. I've been part of these big teams that delivered all that stuff, and it's been brilliant. But it was hard work. It really was. It was obviously, when you do the bricklaying side of things, is the physical side, and that's really hard work. But when you're doing the site management stuff, it's more the mental strain that it takes on you. And
it's the pressure at the end of the day. It's like you say, the higher up the ladder you go, the more pressure that's sitting on your back. So I guess between the pressure of that, you completely stretching yourself in, it's going to affect you one way or another. Yeah,
that's it. Massively, it did. And I just thought, well, I should know how to do this, and I can't talk about this stuff. So I used to just internalise it and never say anything about it, and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And because I was obviously performing at work, but I could never see that, because I always had that self-doubt. Yeah. The projects kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the pressure started getting more and more and more, and then I'd be thinking the teams are getting bigger, and if I don't have everything sorted and we're flowing and we're working, if we get a whole point, I've got 45 lads out there and like 20 grand a day in wage bills. If they're stood and we're not being productive, then that's all on me. Yeah. And that's why I think I went too far of trying to be too prepared, and I used to live way in the future. Yeah. And now I can look back and think, well, future Rob was a knobhead, because he was taking present Rob's life away from him, and it started.
But it's easy to let it overtake. Obviously, that's quite a grand scale when you've got hundreds of other guys and a big wage bill, and you're literally working for a commercial client. I mean, I feel pressure, and I'm only working for myself and a couple of guys, so I can only kind of imagine the stress that you must have been under at that time when things were just massive.
Yeah, and I mean, over time, it did get easier, and you do start to pick up routines, and you do start to do that. But I guess it's all relevant, isn't it? It's all relevant that, although that wasn't my personal money like yours is with the business, I still felt the weight of responsibility that I had to do that, because
ultimately, if you're at a standstill though, and you're causing your guys to be at a standstill, it's their livelihood that's affected as well. So that is, again, as much as it's not your money, you've got that other pressure of people and letting other people down. And I guess it's kind of 6.5 a dozen in it. It's either if you're in the position I'm in and it's my money, or you're in a position where you're dealing with other people. It's still heavy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's like I used to think that there can't be hold points, and the lads can't be stopped working because then they can't earn the money, and then there's all that side that came into it. And again, although it's not my money, I still had 25 mortgages to make sure that they earned enough money to pay and rent and everything else that goes with it. It's and you're working in difficult environments. Winter time, as we pulled up here, it started to snow, but there's still people that have got to get up and get out in this and do the work.
Good old Glasgow for you.
It is June when we've recorded.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it starts snowing in June, to be honest with you. Well, obviously, when you're in the commercial side, you've obviously hit a point where you decided you had to make a change. So let's talk a wee bit about that side of it.
So the change for me happened when I had a massive meltdown on a site. I was working on some project in Liverpool, and at this point there'd been a lot going on in my family, in my personal life. I struggled with the kids coming along. Me and Lou had been together a long time, and kids came along, and that totally changed the dynamic of our relationship, and I was struggling with that. But again, I wasn't really saying anything about it because we don't talk about this stuff, and everybody says, oh, you'll never love anything more than your own kids, and you'll feel like this and you'll feel like that. And I really didn't feel like that, and I felt like I had no bond with my kids, certainly for the first 4 years of their life. Seb, my eldest boy, first 4 years of his life. There was a lot of turbulence in it of me, because I was so stressed and overworked and putting so much pressure on myself and not looking after myself. I'd come home and take out my frustrations on the ones that you love because it was easy, and I'd be ratty with them and short and not wanting to come home. There'd be some nights where I pull up on the drive and I'd be in the van or the pickup, whichever I was in, and I'd just be sat there for an hour on the drive just running through all this stuff, and why did I say that, and I messed that up, and I'm not good enough for this, and I thought,
so basically you were bringing everything back home with you as well.
I was, and then I'd sit there, and then I'd have to psych myself up to go through my own front door, because I used to see home as a site as one job and my home life as another, because I was struggling the two. And then I'd be putting this act on all the time, that everything's okay and I can keep going and I'm all right and I don't need to talk about this stuff, and I just push it down, ignore it, that feeling will pass. And it all came to a big head for me when I was doing this job in Liverpool, and I was due to go away for a long weekend, and I was there over the weekend, and Seb, my eldest boy, just wouldn't eat pizza that he'd been asking me for all day. And I just absolutely exploded and threw it everywhere and screaming and shouting and swearing at him. And then I was like, why have I done this? And then I went and hid in a bedroom for the rest of that weekend. But at 4:30 on the Monday morning, my alarm goes off, I get up and I go out to work. Because I felt that sense of weight of responsibility that I've got to turn up to work so I can go out on site and these lads can turn up and they can earn the money and we can keep the job progressing forward. And I got in that Monday morning and I got everybody sorted, all the sites set up, everything was done, and we were moving on with it. And it got to almost lunchtime and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pushing myself. I couldn't keep going, I'll be all right. And I just went out into the car park and I broke down, and ended up ringing my boss and speaking to him on the phone, and we were sorting stuff out, and I just told him everything that was going on, saying how I felt, how I'd let him down and the team down, and this has happened at home and that's gone on, and I just feel like I'm failing everywhere and I'm letting everybody down. And he was like, look, let's get you some help. Have a bit of time off, and you can sort all this out, and you can come back, and we'll get you back on your feet and everything like that. And I was fortunate that I worked for a great company
he supported you, basically stood by you.
Yeah,
and said,
exactly.
That's fine, we'll get it fixed.
And that's it. And then I had a bit of time off, and I came back, and I basically started to rebuild myself. But I knew that I had to do it a bit differently. I did enjoy working on the commercial side, and like I said, I was very proud of everything that I'd achieved up to that point. But I knew it had to change, and I knew I had to do something different. And I had a meeting with my boss in another car park, and I'd nipped back to get some scaffold fittings. I think I'd gone back for, and he was leaving to go for a meeting. He's like, right, what do you want to do? Do you want to carry on with your job? Do you want to go back on the tools? Do you want to go drive one of the machines for us? You can do anything you want, Rob. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And he said to me, I tell you what, 'cause I was doing my MVQ level 6 then. He was like, finish your MVQ level 6. And then when you've done that, go to uni, get your NEBOSH and become a health and safety manager for us. And I stood there and thought about it for a bit, and I was like, yeah, all right, if you want me to.
Yeah.
And he let me have it that morning. He was like, it's not if I want it, it's if you want it. And he didn't say it as nice as that. And he proper let me have it, like gave me a full Alex Ferguson treatment. And I stood there and I thought about it. I was like, all right. I was like, well, I said, can I do a bit more on the mental health side of things? I said, obviously I had all that stuff that went on. And I said that the lads sort of resonate to me anyway, and they'll come in and chat to me and they'll tell me they've done this or they've done that, or this has gone on or that's gone on, or they'll message me on a Sunday night and say, drug and alcohol coming in because I've had a heavy weekend and I don't know what to do, or I've got this going on in my life and I don't know how to handle it, and how would you handle it? And no, I never gave them any of the answers, but I guess I gave them a safe space to offload and talk.
You gave them an avenue to speak.
Yeah. And just release that. And it's exactly what I needed to do for myself.
Yeah.
But I was too busy doing it for others to take care of myself. And I was like, well, can I do a bit more on that? He's like, yeah, absolutely. If you want to do that, let's find a role for you within the business doing that. And I went off and did an awareness course. He arranged for me. Well, I think Vicky in the office arranged it. I went off and did some training, did a half-day awareness course. And then I did a 2-day mental health first aid course, and then I did an instructor to deliver those courses, and then I did a trainer so I could train instructors to go out and do all this sort of stuff. And this was over a year or so's period, and I was still continuing being the project manager and doing all these big projects. And then it sort of got to COVID time and everything like that, and I was on a project that was sort of coming to an end. And we got that finished, and I started another site. And when I was on the other site, I was sat there and I was thinking to myself, because it started raining, and all the lads had gone home, and I was catching up with a bit of paperwork. And I sat there and I thought, I've obviously been through all that, and I'm doing all this work, and I'm finding out all these facts and figures and the opinions that people have of mental health and well-being within the industry. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way of getting this out and getting the message across to it. And like my biggest problem was I wasn't talking.
Yeah.
I just didn't talk, because we don't talk about this stuff in the industry. And I thought, you know what, why don't I start a podcast about mental health in construction? And that's exactly what I did. It was one of them moments where it just clicked in me, and I was like, right, okay. And again, I rang my boss up and I was like, what do you think about this? He's like, if you want to do it, do it. And I did, and I went away and I started, and I spoke. I had a mate, Tom, he's my brother's mate actually, Tom, and Andy introduced us to Tom, and I went and explained what I was thinking of doing. He's like, yeah, great, let's do it. And that was like 3.5 years ago now, 3.5 years ago it was. And it just sort of snowballed from there. The first episode was me just talking about how I've got to that point and what I wanted to do and what my ideas were. And now I've done 35 episodes, something like that. And although I've had a bit of a break from it at the minute, and it's taken me all over the place. Yeah. I've spoke at big shows at the NEC and London and Excel Centre, and it's now led me to do the work that I do now. I go out and do keynote speaking, and I go in and help and support companies with the mental health and well-being and how to act and look after the staff and things like that. A lot of the time I'm teaching people how to talk to other human beings like a human being, and just dial it back a bit. And I think because it is such a high-pressured industry, you've got a tiny amount of time to do a huge amount of work for a massive amount of money that you might earn, especially on the principal contractor side, 1 to 3% of, you've got to risk all that. And the pressure is there, and it can be a volatile industry, but it's phenomenal where it's led me to. And if you'd said to me 3 years or 3.5 years ago that if you start this, you'll be doing this, and you won't have to touch your trowel again or be on a big site anymore, not in a management capacity anymore, I would have said, yeah, right. And it just took off, and I absolutely love it. I love the work that I do now.
And here you are doing it again.
Absolutely.
Well, I've obviously seen some of your episodes, and I've actually watched quite a lot of them, to be honest with you. So you've managed to meet quite a few people throughout it. And obviously you're in a position now where you're talking most days to people about mental health and everything else, construction. So I've obviously had the privilege of coming with you today to a site to see you working firsthand. What do you see the Lighthouse charity doing for the industry?
So for those who don't know, the Lighthouse charity has been around since 1956, and it was set up to help and support construction workers and their families. And that's exactly what it does today. And a lot of people think that it is just mental health they help with, but it's a huge, vast array of stuff that they help with. And I am just one cog in the wheels. I'm part of what's called the Make It Visible team. So there's myself and 6, 7, 8 others, other of us that go around and give these talks out on site, raise the awareness, give little bits of training, and we are like the start of people's journeys a lot of the time, who then get in contact with the charity. They'll ring the helpline and they'll speak to one of the advisors, and then that's where they can go off and get the help and support with things like the cost of living crisis. We can help with that. They might come home and the freezer's broke and all the food's spoiled in it, and you can't get food, a meal for the family that night. We can help with all that sort of stuff. We can replace the white goods. We can help with things like tax returns, help with debt management. If you want to do a bit of e-learning, I did a lot of training with them a few years ago, and on that side of it. And also there's all the traditional things like therapeutic support or physical support that you need. They can help cover bills. The list goes on and on and on and on. And it's a service that is there that is totally free to the industry. You can use it as many times as you want. And it's supported by the industry for the industry. So it's all funded through donations, black tie events, golf days, barbecues. I think somebody paid a fortune to sit next to Frank Bruno at a boxing event, all that sort of stuff. And it's a phenomenal service that is out there for the industry to use, and they are always learning, adapting, starting different things all the time, because we know all the individuals that work within the industry all have different needs and different wants, and not one thing can cure the whole thing or whatever you're looking for. Like me and you could ring up for anxiety, and they might say, right, we'll try this with you, Colin, and we'll try this with you, Rob, or right, well, that worked for Colin, it didn't work for Rob, and vice versa. There's tons of different routes that they do. They're innovating all the time and realising that certain things need to change in the industry, so they're trying to change all that side of things, and they're trying to just change people's opinions of what mental health and well-being is within the construction industry.
So obviously between you working on the Lighthouse charity now and your podcast, they kind of work side and side, don't they? It's giving you an ability to see so much of this this part of the industry of obviously men and women struggling. Obviously I listened to you today and you were giving out some figures at the construction site, and share a wee bit about that, how the industry is affected by it. So as you know, like that site we went on today, everybody had 5-point PPE on, the boots, the hard hats, the high vises, the glasses, the gloves, everything like that. Physical health is and safety is very, very apparent and everywhere on site. But the mental side of things is not there, and they are just as important. But we always go off these figures that, we're doing well because we've only had so many accidents this year, and this is the amount of people that have sadly lost their lives due to accidents on site. The figures that we go off and we quoted today were from the Office of National Statistics from 2021. We were due to get some more out in October for 2022, but they've still not released them yet, up to date. And we, as an industry, we lost, I think it was 45 people due to accidents on site. Even with all the procedures, even with all the health and safety, even with all the regulations that we work to, we still lost 45 people, I think it is. And out of those 45 people, the biggest accident or death caused by accidents was falls from height, which is 17.
But in 2021, in the first month, we lost more people than that to the biggest killer in our industry, and that is suicide. And we lost in that year 507 construction workers took their own life that year. They're the ones we know about, and they're the ones we can link back to construction. It's obviously it's in reality it's probably way more than that.
So they're the statistics that's on paper that you can obviously base that on.
Yeah, exactly. And out of those, I think 4 of those were women, and the rest were all men.
Well, obviously the construction trade is more diverse now, so there is women involved. You can understand why it isn't just men. And even that side we went on today, there was plenty of women in. They might not have been suited and booted in PPE, but they're still part of the industry. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's 83% male dominated.
Really?
Yeah, and and as well, another factor that plays into it. I think over 80% of the industry is self-employed as well. Yeah. So that's a big factor that plays into it.
The figures of 2021 are obviously quite devastating. That's a very high number, especially when you concentrate it just to the construction sector that we're all involved in. Yeah. It's some very, very scary numbers.
In the construction sector, you're 3 times more likely to die by suicide than you are by an accident on site.
Really?
And we have the highest capita per 100,000 deaths to suicide out of any industry. And it's devastating. If you want to break that down and average it out throughout the year, it's 2 every working day. If you do 5 working days in a week, so that's 10 colleagues a week we're losing.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it is scary. It's massive.
It is. It's massive. Obviously, when I watched you deliver your talk today, you could see people were definitely involved. Like, you could see you looking around the room for a distance. I could see that people were really listening to what you're telling them. And what do you aim to gain from doing the wee talks? Today was quite a small talk. You've explained to me it's quite small, but the aim is to achieve what? Like, what is the aim? Just
the aim for me is, 1, to raise the awareness, and 2, let people know what's out there and what's available to them, and to let them they don't need the permission, but to give them the permission to reach out and ask for that help and support, because it is the hardest thing you can do. And if you're working in these tough macho environments where you have got to be hard, there's no doubt about it. You've got to be made of tough stuff to work in this industry. The
stigma is there, and it shouldn't be. That's the thing. That's the hardest part, is getting rid of that, where people are willing to talk. Like today, obviously it didn't happen. Like, nobody really stood and put their hand up when you asked and whatever, and that's understandable, because when you're around your peers, you don't want to look like that person that's needing help or feeling like you're vulnerable, or you just sort of, no, I'm fine.
This is it, and that's why I do it. And I'll go up and I'll be really vulnerable with them all, and I'll tell them a story, and I'll tell them what's going on, and I'll tell them that I've had this go on, and this is going on now, and I am one of them. I can go out and lay the bricks if I want to. If they want somebody who can come and lay slow and rough brickwork, I can come and do it for them. But I can be part of their team. It doesn't make me any less of a person. I am them, and they are me. It's something that we all have going on, because I can guarantee everybody listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, I can guarantee they'll sit there and think, oh, I've got this going on, and how do we deal with that, and what I'm going to do with that. Everybody has stuff that goes on. It's just how you choose to deal with it.
You choose to deal with it, exactly. So see, I was kind of open with you earlier when I was chatting to yourself and Sam. I started our business when I was at my lowest. I crumbled, and again, the stigma was there, and the doctor says to me, we'll put you on some antidepressants and stuff like that, and I didn't want to, but I had to do it. I did have an option, but I chose the option of going on antidepressants and trying to better myself, and the stigma that comes with it is terrible. But in hindsight, I built my world as it is now from being at my lowest, when I had my mental breakdown and I was crushed and my world totally changed. But with help and support, with speaking to people, you can pick yourself back up. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting to speak. So you're giving people that avenue when you're in that construction site. You're giving them that chance to, even that wee card that you showed me, even having that is just enough that it might just trigger somebody to go, I'm going to phone it.
This is it, and I know that there's somebody out there that's going to listen to me, and they're not going to judge me, and they're not going to think I'm just being stupid or anything like that. And they know that they can call them anytime they want, even if it is just a chat, because you might just have a question in your head and you think, am I doing this right? Am I not doing it right? I was on a site in Leith yesterday in Edinburgh, and there was a guy who came over to his mow, and he was like, oh, I use that. I gave him a call actually a couple of months ago because he was on a job and he was stressed out with what he was doing, and he was getting bombarded with jobs to do, and he wasn't finishing what he was doing, and he said he was going home and he was coming up with this conversation that he was going to have with his boss the next day, and he's like, is this the right, he's going to say this and I'm going to say that and we're going to fall out and it's going to be like that, and he was carrying all that stress with him, and he gave the helpline a call and they just gave him a different point of view on it, and gave him a bit of advice. He then went in to work the next day. Instead of being like a bear with a sore head, he went in and was like, look, this is what's going on and I can't do all this. And he said it was great and we sorted it out, and he stayed and finished that project. And it totally changed his direction of the way he was going with that conversation he had in his head. And that was just a quick phone call. He said I was on the phone 25-30 minutes, and he says I know I can use that anytime I want again if I need to do that. If I do get stuck in my own head, I can give him a call and sort that out. And that's exactly what they're there for. Yeah,
it's that easy though. If you get stuck in your own head, it could be crippling. So see, I was lucky enough, I had a partner that stood by me when I was at my lowest and kind of gave me the shove, and we broke up. During my breakdown, we broke up, but she was still there to support me and kind of just hauled me up. Some people don't have that, so to have that random person on the phone that you might be able to just speak to is massive.
And that's exactly it. And a lot of people find that as a barrier, but this stranger doesn't know me. And they don't know you.
And it's that same thing. It's that big macho stigma where you're not meant to talk about it. Obviously, it's irrelevant if it's a male or a female, but in a male-dominant industry, it's like we don't want to talk about it. We're not vulnerable, we're not weak, we're out, we're making money, we're bringing money home to the family, and it's just shouldn't be like that. It doesn't need to be like that.
This is it. And I put it across to them sometimes. I'm like, right, that van that I turn up to site with, if I drove that van all the thousands of miles that I drive all up and down the country speaking to all these people, if I just drove it and 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 drove it, never changed the oil on it, never put new water in it, never blew the tyres up, never got the brakes fixed on it, it's going to blow up and it's going to break down. And we're exactly the same.
Your story you shared earlier about the bucket, that is exactly it. It's exactly it. Eventually it's going to give way.
If you keep filling the mortar tub or the bucket up with gobbo or mortar or whatever you want to call it, you kept filling it and filling it and filling it, that bucket's either going to split and break because it can't carry anymore, it's going to overflow, and that overflow's got to go somewhere. And we're exactly the same. We've got all this stuff going on, both at home and at work, and the stresses and strains of life in general. And if you've got all this coming on top of you, and then it pays it down, and you can't get the work finished, or materials are not turning up, or a client's not paying you, or the people you're working with, you're falling out with all the time. You've got all these stresses and strains already going on. You're going to get to a point where you're just going to crash and burn. And that's exactly, I've done it, and it sounds like you've done it as well.
And exactly what you said earlier, everybody's got a story, whether they talk about it or not. Everybody's got troubles somewhere. Life isn't amazing every day, all day. There's times in your life where it is a bit shit, it is a bit rough, and it can make or break you depending on how you deal with it. So I get exactly what you're saying. Eventually that bucket's just going to go.
And also you might be able to put up with a load of stuff that I can't put up with, and vice versa. And just, you might be sat here thinking, well, I've got this going on, and John at work's got all this going on, so his problems are way worse than mine. It's not. Again, it's all relevant. If it's happening in your world and you think you can't see a solution to it, or it's changing the way you're thinking, or keeping you awake at night, or when you're driving to work, that's all that's on your mind, or when you're doing your job, you're distracted with this going on, it's a problem, and you need to sort it out. And the Lighthouse are there to help and do that, and they can help you through it. It doesn't matter how big the problem is, or how much debt you're in, or you've got a big tax bill that you need to get sorted and you haven't done it. They can help with all of it. They won't turn you away. They won't go to you, why have you let yourself get to this point? They'll be like, right,
it's a non-judgmental thing as well. It's just
absolutely,
the emotional and obviously support that you need just to try and break through that barrier of I'm done.
And they've absolutely heard it all before.
Yeah.
They really, really have. I'm sure they could write books and books and books of the stories and things that have gone on over the years on the helpline, and how people have reached out for help and support when they thought, well, I'll be all right, I can keep going, when in reality they really couldn't. And if they hadn't reached out, I mean, the tours that we do now, between the team, we spoke to nearly 40,000 tradespeople. I think we're up to 36,000 tradespeople, construction workers over the past 2 years.
Yeah. And you literally travel the length of the country.
Yeah. And I think we're up to over 300 active rescues. So there's 300 people that have received treatment off the back of these talks that we can say is still in our industry today because of the support that we received.
So hanging up your trowel was well worth it to go and do something like this that's making a massive change?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I never laid a brick again in my life, I'd be pretty happy. But sometimes you got to do it. I need to pay the bills. But it's definitely well worth it. It's so rewarding, and going out and doing the talks, it's very cathartic. It is my therapy, whether it is the podcasting side of things, because I did an episode with somebody and they're like, this is your therapy, innit? I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it is.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So see, I've watched quite a lot of your podcast, but hearing you today on site speaking was totally different. I don't know why it was different, but it was different, and there was so much that I could relate to and go, that's true, that's real. Do you know what I mean? It's totally different from watching it on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, and then seeing you in person delivering something. You can see you're passionate about it. You can see, like you said, you make yourself vulnerable, so these guys can understand and open up. So it was quite a pleasure to see you in first person.
Thank you, appreciate that. And that was quite a tame one, that one as well.
It did seem a bit tame.
Sometimes I get it, like, we were on one on Monday and I think there was about 80 people in the room, and I'll go first because it's Sam's first week, and I'll whip them up and get them going. And I was like, it was in the afternoon, I was like, afternoon everyone, and they were like, afternoon. I'm like, come on.
That big school teacher.
Yeah, come on, we can do better than that. And I'll get them going, and then we'll have a bit of banter, and I'll push back on all that sort of stuff, and I'll get them going, and then I'll hit into it.
Obviously, you've been through site management and stuff, but it must still be daunting standing in that kind of environment with all these guys that you don't know how they're going to react to you. Like, they could be as stern and shut off as they want, and some people might obviously interact, but it must be quite daunting sometimes when you've got a bit, like you put a post up the other day and there must have been easy 40-50 guys there all wrapped round, and you're obviously standing doing your chat.
I don't know, I think I must have got a bit war hardened to it a bit, but I mean, I was used to talking to people anyway through my old job. Like, I used to have to deliver talks like that all the time anyway, and I think my personality fits into it, that I'll fake it till I make it, and just be brazen with it, and I think because I was constantly fighting those feelings of feeling insecure and not good enough, I used to force myself really hard to do that stuff, and it's played well into this. My personality obviously fits into it, and I don't overthink it now. I just do it and don't let it intimidate me. And there is times when you, like, when I first started doing it, I'm like, oh God, there's quite a lot of people here now. Like, I was in Ireland in Dublin, and we did it on a roof, and the crane driver actually got a really good picture. It was over 350 people there doing it, and we had no microphones or anything like that. I was screaming at the top of my voice doing it, but I don't know, it doesn't really faze me too much. I just do it and crack on with it, or I don't allow it to faze me.
I'm not a great public speaker, if I'm honest with you, so I think I'd be shitting a brick. One of the ones that you can lay.
Well, this is it though. I think once you get in the stream of it and you get going and you're in the zone, and it really is. And then especially when you get like a lot of good feedback, like we were over in another site in Glasgow yesterday, and they were quite a difficult crowd, and although they were good to us, they weren't too harsh. But when people think they're going to get a talk about mental health and well-being, they think, oh, we can walk all over them, and we can push back, and a lot of it is deflection and all that sort of stuff. But we did it, and I went in and we had the banter with them, and then they were coming up to us at the end of it like, oh, nice one, that was all right. I could relate to so much of that, and we're swearing at them, and we're talking their language. And I actually did the hardest one I've probably done is I did one in September in London, middle of London, Fleet Street, and I turned up to this site, and the site just looked off. So all the hoarding wasn't right, and the monoflex around the scaffolding was flapping in the wind. I was thinking, this is central London, this is right on view of everybody, this should be a bit better. And when I turned up, the site contact said, "Oh, I'm really sorry for the people that I've got on site." And I was like, why are they apologising straight away? I've not even got out of the van yet. And I walked in there and I started talking in this canteen, and there wasn't many people in there. I think there was about 25, 30 people in there. And within the first 3 minutes, I must have triggered the whole room. We're just talking about what I was going on about and the way I was and what I used to do and all that sort of stuff. And there was 10 people going at me, full on going at me, and screaming and shouting and all that sort of stuff. And I was looking at the site team as if to say, are you going to control your staff or have I got to do it? And I think they thought they could push me out there, but they didn't realise I'd dealt with bigger and badder people than all them.
Plenty of experience behind you.
Wrangling bricklayers, it's like trying to herd cats sometimes. But I pushed back on it and I told them, I was pretty firm with them and telling them to shut up and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, if you don't want to listen to this, you can do one if you want. And I said, because there's plenty of people in here that do need to hear this and they do want to listen to it. Now you can either shut up or you can go and listen to what I have to say, because you might take something away from this. And at the end of it, they were stood taking pictures at the van and all that sort of stuff.
Starting to interact with them.
Yeah, got it.
So I say, it was the experience I got today was obviously from the canteen that you were doing your speech, and then down to the van. You can see how people approach the van easier than what they do putting their hand up in front of people. Obviously it wasn't a very lively one today, but there was a couple of guys that came up and they're like, oh, thanks very much, that was good to hear. And I guess that's a rewarding side of it as well.
Oh yeah, massively. And like I've been back to sites, or I've been, it actually happened in Scotland. So I'd come up in the November and some guy come up to me and said to me, I've got my tax return coming up and I've not done anything about it. I owe about 10 grand on it or something. And most of that was fines because he hadn't done his return and everything like that. Anyway, I referred him, put him through to the helpline team, and they put him on to the tax people that we use. And I came back and I went to Edinburgh. There's a hospital in Edinburgh that's just been done. Right. I actually drove past it the other night. It looks wicked now, all lit up at night and everything like that. It's all finished. And the same guy came up to me. He went, I seen you on that site. I was like, oh yeah, how did you get on? He went, yeah, I sorted it. I said, I still got to pay a bit of money, but they helped negotiate it and sorted it all out for me. And when you hear stuff like that, it's wicked. And we've had somebody in Ireland that was on the brink, and they'd heard one of our talks and gone and reached out and got the support. And then we came back, and again we were on a different site, and he was there, and he actually stood up and spoke to everybody that was on that site. And I was like, mate, kudos to you. That's hard, that coming up, because I'm doing it, and it is like you say, daunting to do it, but I'm doing it to complete strangers, and they don't know me. I'll come up, I'll do the talk, and I tell them about the services, and then we go, and I may never see them again. But this individual got up and spoke and said, look, I reached out a couple of months ago, and this has happened, and I've been through this, and I've sorted myself out, and they've helped and supported me, and now I'm back to work, and I'm back to full strength, earning my money, providing, and everything like that. And it is really, really amazing to hear and see these people along the way. And it's just feeds back into it because it is tiring, and it is a lot of driving, and you're away from home and you're living in a suitcase and you think it's glamorous. But Premier Inns, I think I completed Premier Inn and I've completed the menu about 400 times. But when you hear stuff like that, it's massive. It makes
it worth it.
Oh yeah,
that's just massive. Satisfaction. Yeah, it's not standing back looking at the wall. It's when you get things like that. I must obviously touch a wee bit of you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been there's been a few times where there's cases that people have come up and spoke, and I'm like, my God, how are you still going? How are you still being productive in your life when you've had all this go on and you're living through that? And I often think about certain individuals and think, God, I wonder how they're doing. Yeah. I wonder if they've gone on. Well,
you must see quite a lot of people, so there must be people that actually stick in your head like that you're going to think, I wonder how they're getting on now.
Yeah, exactly. And then hopefully when we come back in the areas, I always try and hope that I'll see that individual on.
Like he's done with that guy.
Yeah.
Him again.
Yeah.
A good sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side of it, there's individuals that we refer and they do drop out. They don't take the help, and that's okay, because one, they know it's there, and two, that they know that people will call them, but they're not ready yet, or they're not in a position. But if they ever needed to or if they ever get to that position and realise that, you know what, I do need this help, they can always reach out and get that support for them because they know what it's all about.
Yeah. So in terms of your podcast, obviously you started your podcast through your own mental health struggles and kind of giving yourself a platform to speak about it. How have you found that interacting with people? Like YouTube is obviously a maze at times. Like you get good comments, you get bad comments. Yeah. How have you found your podcast develop?
I've never really had any bad press. I've had the odd stupid comment on you're not a real bricklayer and all that sort of stuff, but it's a hell of a lot of work, as you'll find, and it takes over your life, and you don't like. I have to wind my own neck in sometimes and think, well, it's not about getting thousands of views and stuff like that. It's about creating a space for people to listen and do that, and it's created lots of friendships along the way, and it's, like I said before, it's given me loads of opportunities for work, and it's changed my career path massively, but it's just knowing that people can sit there and take out sections of what we spoke about. Like I said to you, you'll start getting people mentioning, oh, you said this at a certain amount of time and that really resonated with me and that's totally changed my opinion, or you had this guest on and they spoke about this, and I've been at that point in my life and I now realise that it is going to get better and I can change that, and ultimately we're giving people permission to talk about it and a bit of hope, or more than a bit of hope, that they're getting the hope that if they do start to make those changes and they do start to either reach out or make those changes themselves or go and speak to individuals and say, look, I know you can do this, can you help me with that? Because I'll get a lot of messages. I have to be quite strict with my inbox on like Instagram and
socials.
Stuff. Socials like that, because a lot of people might sit and listen to an episode and then reach out to me for help and support, and I absolutely can sort that out for them if they need the help and support, but I'm not there 24 hours a day.
You're not a 24-hour service, of course,
and this is it, and people have to remember that, and I have to be quite strict because it can be 11 o'clock at night and my phone starts pinging, and like for a while I've actually switched notifications off because I started to notice it was taking over my life, and I wasn't paying attention to other things and I wasn't looking after my own needs first.
Definitely, and this is one of the reasons why I've tried to bring this podcast the way I want to develop it as well, is to show people that everybody behind the face of a company, or in your case a face of a podcast and obviously your charity work with the Lighthouse and stuff, you're still a real person at the end of the day. And there is services out there that are 24/7, like your card and your phone number. They can answer the phone because that's what they do. So it's important for people to understand that you are a real person and you will help where you can, but you do need to switch off. Like you say, it can be mentally, it can burn you out if you don't switch off. Because
if I'm constantly like doing these talks and the work that you do give a little piece of yourself away every single time you do it.
As I say, I noticed that when I was listening to you today, like obviously you shared a story and I was like, I didn't know that. And I've watched most of your podcasts and I can hear your story, obviously shared through that, but as you're literally getting a wee bit away as you speak, I guess. And
I've got to remember to replenish that bit and look after me, because if all these people that do, well, not rely on me, but look to me for help and support, I've got to be able to be there to help and support them, and for that I've got to be at 100% of my game, and that's why I need to give back to me all the time, and sometimes I can be bad for not doing that, but when I realise that and I have those moments of think, crap, I've not been looking after myself, I draw a line in the sand,
take a wee step back and just go again.
Right, go again. Exactly that. Nobody's perfect. That's the thing people have got to remember. Nobody's perfect.
That's the Instagram world. Nobody is perfect, whereas everybody thinks you are. You're a real person. Do you know what I mean? You've got your own struggles, your own things to deal with. But your podcast, I say, I've watched them and I've read the comments, and I can pinpoint a few comments where people are like, "Man, that was brilliant. I can totally relate to that, and it's helped me," and whatever else. So again, that must give you another sense of satisfaction that you're creating a platform where people can talk, and these random people that you probably don't know are reaching out and saying, "Mate, this is amazing."
Yeah, absolutely, it's massive. And like, I know, like, Sam, who's with us, has been obsessed with Greg's Annie today. and I was in a Greg's.
Still never taken my Greg's.
That's why I didn't take it, because he doesn't show up about it. But I was in, because I was working in Stockport, I live over near Manchester, and I had a guy come up to me in Greg's and went, is it you from the podcast? And I'm like, Yes.
You've made it.
Yeah, and that was a bit weird, but he was like, mate, I listen to it all the time because I look forward to hearing all the different stories and all the different things that gone on in it. And like, as you know, you've obviously listened to a lot of them, and some people absolutely bare their souls to me.
They're just sort of
and other people come on and talk about tools and the job and bits like that, and I'm like absolutely fine with that because
it's just raw.
It's raw, and it's why I started the podcast, to start conversations, because you never know where those conversations go. They could lead on, or they could give somebody the confidence to reach out for that bit of help and support, or find somebody that can help them with something, or ask those questions, because I always had tons of questions like I did when I started in the trade. I was fine asking all those questions because I thought, well, I'm new to this and I don't know all this sort of stuff and I need to know that. But when it came to my own mental health and well-being, I thought, well, I should know the answer to these questions, and I just didn't.
No, I agree with you, mate. It's one of the ones, there is questions you just can't answer yourself as well. Like you just... Everybody's got an issue somewhere, and you might not know it yet, but it might hit you at some point in your life, and you just don't know the answer. Like, I've been there myself, same as what you're saying. You've been there. It's hard, and there's a way through it if you reach out to the right person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously we've sat and spoke about your change in life and your Lighthouse charity job, and obviously your podcast. So can you just share with the listeners your podcast, because I hope they're all going to go and watch it now and find out a wee bit more about you. So if you can just share the name and the channel, and we'll... So if you search MYH Podcast, it'll pop up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or all that sort of stuff. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, Google, Pocket Cast, all those everywhere really. I do need to pull my finger out and get another episodes done, but I've taken a pause. I haven't released one since September last year, but I needed to give back to me. Yeah, that's it. That was that wee line you're talking about. Recharge.
And I'm now coming to the point where I'm going to start and get back in the studio and get recording and get it sorted. So keep an eye out for it all. Yep,
keep an eye on it. Go view it. And Rob, thank you very much for sharing your story.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.